I'm so honored to be here today to talk to all of you and share a little bit about what I sort of describe the conscious transition of stepping into John Mackey's role as CEO just over a year ago. And for me, this has been just a complete honor to be able to help lead a company that I love and completely believe in our purpose and values. One of the things that we started about a year ago at Whole Foods is something we call My Why. And the My Why is an opportunity for team members to be able to express why they're at Whole Foods. Why did they join? Why have they stayed? And in many cases, the My Whys actually change. A lot of our team members join Whole Foods because they need a job, they need money, but they stay for various reasons. Fortunately for me, my three whys are all the same. They're the reason I joined Whole Foods and the reason I'm still here today. The first is around purpose. I came to Whole Foods Market because of the purpose. It's one of the things that continues to connect me to the company. I came for the people and I stay for the people. I got to meet some amazing people as I was having conversations around joining the organization and prior within my last career. And it's even a bigger reason of why I stay today. And the last is around food. I have a deep connection to food and a love for it. And so that's really my why I'm at Whole Foods. And going a little bit deeper on my connection to food, I just wanted to share a little bit around my upbringing. I grew up in Wisconsin. Both of my grandparents were dairy farmers. Both my parents grew up on dairy farms. As a young kid, I spent a lot of time on both of these farms, particularly the one on the left, which is where my mom grew up. I was involved in a lot of different aspects of helping support the farm, whether it was helping bale hay, to picking stones, to helping butcher, to whatever help sort of needed to take place. Additionally, I was a big gardener at a young age. I started gardening when I was 7. For those of you who are familiar with 4-H, I was part of 4-H for 10 years. Gardening was the only project that I did over the entire course of the 10 years. So I was growing produce and showing it at the fair, and some of the pictures that you sort of see here. But I also had the honor. My dad was a cheesemaker. It's very stereotypical Wisconsin, I guess. But I got to have an understanding from his perspective of sort of the process of making cheeses and the challenges that came along with that as well. And so that's a little bit about sort of my upbringing in connection with food. And when I look at sort of my path to Whole Foods, it was sort of a unique one. I went to school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And during that time frame, had an internship at Harley-Davidson Motor Company, which actually is a key reason of why I ended up at Whole Foods, interestingly enough. Over about a 3-year period while interning there, I got to work on many different projects, but my favorites were the ones that I got to work with dealers. And part of the reason for that was the retail outlet for Harley-Davidson Motor Company. And I got really excited about the ways of interacting with customers, the technology that was needed to support those experiences. And it's really where I got my energy from. And what I also had an opportunity to do while I was interning there was work alongside a consulting company. At the time, it was Anderson Consulting, and really liked the work that different folks got to do there. And so it had me join the company. It became Accenture about a year after I joined, in working with a number of different clients. And I had petitioned from day one to move, which my original assignment was to be part of automotive industrial equipment because of the work I had done with Harley, to say, I want to be in the retail practice, because the work I actually loved and did really got excitement for at Harley was around working with dealers. And that ultimately panned out in my favor. And so for just under 13 years, I had an opportunity to work with a bunch of leading retailers from around the world. And what was really fortunate for me is this experience allowed me to connect with 2 leaders at Whole Foods Market, Walter Robb and Glenda Flanagan, former co-CEO and CFO of Whole Foods Market. This picture is from one of my very first weeks at Whole Foods. I'm actually with a bunch of UT interns who were working over the winter, it started over the winter semester. And during my early conversations with Walter and Glenda, they had reached out to me to see if I knew any candidates who might be interested in joining Whole Foods Market as the Chief Information Officer. Was a position they were looking to fill. And so I gave them 3 names of people I thought would be really good fits. And about 6 weeks later, Glenda phoned me up and said, those didn't work out. Is there any reason you didn't put your name on the list? And I explained to her, this wasn't good timing for me. I wouldn't be able to move to Austin, and but I love the company. I've been a customer for over 12 years. She's like, come to Austin and just spend a little bit of time with us before you say no. You may regret it otherwise. And so I came here for 2 days with the total intention of saying, sorry, this isn't going to work, but I love you all. But out of respect, I wanted to come and spend the time together. And it was actually after day 1, I was already changing my mind. Glenda was brilliant. She had me meet with all these amazing people. So I got a better understanding of the company. And for me, it was the realization over those 2 days, as you saw, I worked with many, many companies in my past career, that I saw the purpose and values were not just words on a wall. Like, they were being lived out every single day. And I got to meet these amazing people. And so by the end of the second day, I was like, yeah, I'm interested. Like, when can I get started? And they're like, oh, well, we've got this very complicated panel process. So you're going to have to start due diligence and you're going to have to panel for it. I'm like, oh, okay, let's go through it. Well, fast forward, I joined Whole Foods. I joined as our Chief Information Officer and helping lead our digital businesses, so standing up our pickup and delivery business. And those experiences allowed me to take on more responsibilities in areas like standing up our first global operations support team, helping lead team member services, which is what we call HR at Whole Foods, and ultimately stepping into the COO role in 2019. And that allowed and gave me the opportunity, when John announced his retirement, that I would step into the CEO role. And now I want to sort of talk through what that sort of point from that announcement through the transition into present day. And going back to that September 30th of 2021, this is one of those days that I will sort of live with me forever. I had more text messages, emails, calls, messages than I've ever received in my entire life, including the day I started officially as CEO. But you have people you've never heard from and people you haven't heard from in a long time that reach out. And so those first couple of days, you're like filled with a lot of excitement. And one of the things that I wanted to do to really connect with our team members after they heard the announcement is understand, what are they looking for and what's on their minds. And so I kicked off, was basically a listening tour that October, where I was visiting a number of our regions, meeting with team members, doing coffee chats, team member connection meetings. And there was a lot of things that I was hearing, concerns that team members had, or just really wanting to know the direction. And, quite frankly, wondering what's going to change with John retiring? Are our quality standards going to go away? Am I going to try to automate everything in the company? And so there was this aspect of, I started to feel the weight in those conversations of the responsibility that I had in making sure I could continue to ensure that Whole Foods Market could lead with our purpose, our core values, our quality standards, and the culture that we know and love. And so those conversations, gave me, a lot of pressure around what our team member expectations were. I also did a lot of virtual meetings as well. And, sometimes I would get the questions coming in that, ultimately had me wonder, is the team behind me or not? Folks concerned oh, you're the tech guy. Are you the, secret plant of Amazon to come and change and integrate the entire company? People I would meet and they're like, you're kind of young. Are you ready to step into this role or not? And so for me, this was something that I really had to sort of take in and absorb and, understand how do I make sure that I can focus on and make sure I can build the trust with our team members. And this was a big change. This was the first time in the history of the company that John was going to be stepping out. He'd been our co-founder and our CEO for the history of the company. And at the same time, I had just completed a 360-degree feedback that Heath had actually helped support. And this is one of those deep 360-degree feedbacks. And I highly recommend it. It's painful while you do it, but it really will help you. And I was absorbing some of the feedback that folks amongst my team, and we actually purposely went out to store team leaders and other folks within the organization, things that they felt were opportunities for me. And so I was sort of in this vulnerable space over those first 60 to 90 days of trying to process a lot of this. And what I wanted to do was figure out what's a way that I can help bring together the organization and at the same time let them know who I am as a person and how I can help ensure that we can lead the company forward together in the way that's going to serve all of our stakeholders. And that led to something that we call the Whole Conversations Tour. And this was a really deliberate way that I was going to be able to connect with as many team members and stakeholders for the company as possible. And this was something that had me visit every single one of, we call them regions, as well as our global support offices, and making sure I could visit each of the countries we operate in. So it was 13 stops spread out between 2 to 4 days of connecting with suppliers, customers, community partners, visiting stores and doing team member connection meetings. And ultimately, it had a dedicated day where on that day, every single store or facility within that region had an opportunity to send 2 representatives to participate in a conversation getting to know me better, but ultimately an opportunity for us to look at what are the opportunities Whole Foods has both in the short term and the long term, with the intention of taking that feedback in and helping weave it into our future vision. I also wanted to help really sort of ignite some of the concerns that I had and help disprove things like our quality standards might go away when John retires. And so over that Whole Conversations Tour, I just had an amazing opportunity in connecting with the team members, with customers, suppliers, and felt really good about how that was going to lead into the creation of our future vision. And ultimately, we pulled together something collectively that we call Growing with Purpose, which was a co-creation of all of our stakeholders coming together. And this is a visual that we use to help roll this out, to just have team members have an understanding. And the important things I wanted to illustrate were we're going to continue to be rooted in the same core values that we always have. Culture is going to continue to nurture the company and our vision going forward. We're going to continue to be led by our higher purpose. And I wanted to have some clear priorities that we could really rally our work around. So I was really, really excited about this. And as we went through, just before the transition took place, we got results back from our annual Culture Compass survey, which is our annual team member engagement. And there were 2 things that kind of really hit me hard that I wasn't expecting. One was our team members' confidence in the direction of the company went down about 350 basis points. And so this was, approximately 9 to 9.5 months after it had been announced that I was going to be stepping into the role. We also had about a 230 basis point drop in team members' connection to our higher purpose and mission. And so I was a little deflated in reading that, knowing that I'm just going to be stepping into the role officially in a little bit. And I thought all this great work we'd done, the Whole Conversations Tour, was going to help solve and support that. What I hadn't necessarily, looked at was at the macro level, things take time, and I need to be patient. It wasn't just going to be about, checking a bunch of boxes and doing a single tour. I needed to make sure that we ultimately could bring folks along, and I had to show the work. The tour was just about the talk. So as part of Growing with Purpose and sharing it with the organization, I wanted to make sure that we could bring all of our stores along in this process. So when we unveiled it, I made the commitment that every single one of our stores, facilities, and primary offices was going to be visited by a member of our executive team to talk about it, have a conversation, have a dialogue, get feedback, do Q&A, and ultimately do a visit of that facility. And that's something that we kicked off at the beginning of the year. We're currently at about 450 stores. So I'm on the road a lot right now having those conversations. And when you sort of fast forward, we just completed our annual Culture Compass survey. We were able to move up team members' confidence in where the company is heading. That moved up 710 basis points. And the connection to our higher purpose and mission has moved up about 630 basis points. And so a big focus on this has been, how do we make sure we're cultivating the culture that we're looking to and bringing our team members along with the process? And I just had a few pictures here. What's been great is getting my entire executive team out there, because it can't just be me, it needs to be all of us helping support this. As I sort of went through our process over the course of this last year in the roadshow, there's a couple of key things I really wanted to make sure that our team members understood. These are things that we are focused on within our culture. The first one was around the renewed connection to our purpose and core values. And I've been trying to lead by example in getting out, we call it in the field, and being able to see these experiences firsthand, getting our culture champions seeing them firsthand, and being able to bring videos and collateral back so our team members can really understand the amazing work that we're doing around the world and the impact that their jobs are having in supporting this. I also needed to make sure that we could reignite empowerment. This has been a big challenge for us as Whole Foods, as we've done a lot of different organizational changes, we've centralized things, and it's been an area that's really created some challenges for our team members. And so a big focus in our roadshow is our executive team talking to our stores and letting them know you're empowered in these areas. Oftentimes you can have sort of middle management layers. They sort of want to tell everybody what to do. We wanted to make sure we could tell folks, this is where you are free and empowered. And we saw amazing results in our Culture Compass survey of team members actually feeling and seeing some of those changes take place. In the last area, the one that I think has been most important is around reorienting the company to be store-centric. And this is something that I felt the change over the 10 years of being with Whole Foods, the organizational changes that we made, becoming part of Amazon, going through a pandemic, we were less store-centric. We had a lot of bureaucrats who, all good intentions in their roles, weren't looking at the work that they were doing and saying, how does this impact the store, the customer experience, and the team member experience? And this was something that we've had to make a lot of changes around. We used to call our folks in sort of corporate roles, you were part of global support or regional support. We got rid of those words, and you are store support now. Because I want every single one of those team members waking up every day saying, our job is to service and support the stores. It's not just to do the work that we're doing. We've created a number of programs to help connect and make sure that all these folks, especially if they haven't worked in our stores before, have a better understanding, and they feel a responsibility to be connected to our stores and make sure that their work is thinking about our customer and our team member experience. I also want to talk about some of the challenges that I had to experience over the last 12 and 24 months. One of the things that we had to do over the course of the last year was a restructure. Probably a lot of you, if you saw in the news, Amazon made some commitments at the tail end of last year and earlier this year, executed some of those changes. We as Whole Foods were part of that. And quite frankly, my master plan was not necessarily the same master plan of what I had to become part of, but we had to work through it anyway. And it was one of the areas that Keith was referring to. How do we get to, at this point, I couldn't probably find a win-win because I didn't want to necessarily make all the changes, but how do I get to the best possible outcome that we can for the organization at the same time meeting the needs of our parent company? And so this put a lot of stress on the organization overall, and doing that just a few months into stepping in the role is not an easy process. And that led to some team member engagement challenges in a number of areas. Team members felt under this restructure, I don't have as many growth opportunities as I had before. They're also worried about what happens with my job, given some of the other changes that we've had to place. So we've had to put a big focus on how do we make sure that people can understand why we're making the changes that we are, and at the same time, how do we make sure that we are moving the company forward? Also, as a team member, I've had some of my own engagement challenges. I need to make sure that I am spending time, for myself and making sure that I can unplug. And to be honest, my first year, I've overextended myself. And so for me, this is a realization of something that I want to be able to make sure I can be really conscious on how I spend my time and ultimately make sure that I'm sustaining myself, because this is just a marathon. We're just in the very first mile of the journey of where we're going overall. I also had to deal with a lot of new ways of working. One of the things that probably all of you who know John in the room here, he was really good at saying no and holding back on things with our parent company in some areas that we didn't want to change. Well, it wasn't but a few days or weeks, some of the same questions got brought up of, why don't we look at this integration, or why don't we make this change? And so balancing that has definitely been an interesting task as well, because for us, making sure that we can continue to serve our higher purpose and keep the culture we want, there's many things that are important in keeping that balance in place. And so working through those new ways of working can somewhat be a challenge as well. I also wanted to share some learnings that I take through this process. And for anybody who's thinking through what might be a similar transition, things that I would sort of advise based upon my learnings. And the first was around the importance of communication and connection. And this was something that I learned from many great leaders at Whole Foods, within our executive team and other parts of the company, of what I could sort of take and help build into the process of my transition. But it's one that I probably underinvested on in the earliest days. And had I done more of this consciously during the transition period, I think it would have actually supported the process of me stepping in the role. And I probably was in a space of wanting to make sure I could be really respectful before transitioning to the role as John was still CEO. But there's probably some work I could have done in the further connection in that space. And so as I reflected, that was some of the adjustment I made over the course of my first couple months in the role. The next one is around mentorship and support. And for me, this has been just an absolute invaluable process. I wouldn't be on this stage today if it wasn't for my amazing mentors, and I wouldn't have been able to support the transition that I did without their support. And I've got dozens and dozens and dozens. Pictured here are just two, most importantly, John, who not only was it the mentorship, but when I talk about support, one of the things that he really allowed over the transition, which was about 11 months, was really allowing me to step in and be able to lead things. And he was there to help coach and guide me. I mean, many a times, I was in his office at the very end of the day saying, here's a situation on something, I'd love your advice. I remember one key point in June before he retired. He's like, I don't know, this is gonna be something you're gonna have to figure out. I don't wanna tell you the answer or give you my advice, because this is something you need to kind of step in some cases, this needs to be your learning process as well. But what he's really done is he gave me the space during the transition, but he also gave me the space post-transition as well. One of the things that I've had during my mentorship and support is be able to be connected with a number of folks who've dealt with transitioning from a founder or a long-standing CEO. And when you have somebody who might be stepping in continually afterwards, it can be really difficult. And John has been nothing but supportive to me when we have lunch and if I have to ask him a question or want to share something. But he's not there to judge or say, you've done this wrong, or trying to go back in and change situations of what's occurred. And I'm appreciative for that. I'm very fortunate that I've had just an amazing experience in being able to have a leader who's really teed me up for success, and ultimately has given me the space to thrive, but is still there if I need a support in any way. And couldn't ask for a better mentor, John. Thank you so much. None of us would be here today if it wasn't without him, so it's just the amazing connection that we all have. And I will wrap it up as far as my other learning is, looking to your purpose and values when things get tough. And I mentioned, several different things that were difficult to work through. When you can sort of just look back and say, okay, read our core values. Like, how does it tie to what we're looking at? Looking at how we can connect something to our higher purpose, or where there's a friction point and it's not serving these things, it's a good reason to push back and say, here's how we have to look at it differently. So thank you so much for listening to my brief talk this morning on what my transition was like. I'm not able to stay a little bit later today because I've got some meetings, but if I can ever be of help in serving any of you in sharing more about the story or similar things that would be helpful, I'm happy to do so. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.